All right, algebraic reasoning. Today we're going to go over how to factor. So what we're doing here, let me tell you what the answer is to the first one. The answer becomes x plus 1 times x plus 5. And what this comes from is the fact that when you FOIL this, right, we get x times x, which is x squared. And then we do x times 5, which is 5x. And we multiply by 1 times x, which is 1x, and we conclude with 1 times 5, which is 5. And what this illustrates is, put these two together, we end up back to the original function. So what we're going to do in this section is we're essentially going to reverse FOIL. So notice what we did to begin with. We multiplied x by x. So when we attack this question, what we ask ourselves is what times what is going to give me this value? If it's x squared, it's got to be x and x. Then, because of the ease of it, we actually jump to the back number and we say what times what gives me 5. In this case, it's 1 and 5. And the goal is by adding or subtracting 1 and 5, you're either adding or subtracting 1 and 5. Oops. If I add or subtract 1 and 5, I have to get to 6. So clearly, when we add these two together, we get to 6. And the reason why you ask if you add or subtract is because in this stage here, right, we combine like terms, and that's usually by adding or subtracting. Now, signs play a role, but when we get there, we'll get there. Let's look at the next one. B squared minus 14b plus 45. So I'd encourage you to pause the video, try to figure it out on your own, see if you can do it. Let's assume that you've tried. B squared, b times b. 45. What times what's 45? 5 and 9. Can you add or subtract 5 and 9 and get to 14? Well, if I add, 9 plus 5 is 14. But now the trick here is because this is a negative, both of these must be negative. And look what happens. Negative 5 plus negative 9 gives me negative 14. And negative 5 times negative 9 gives me positive 45. So remember, the back, it's when you multiply. And because a negative is a positive, we get the answer. All right, next up. Y squared plus 7y plus 6. So hopefully at this point, what you're catching on is that the first part, since it's just y squared, is just y and y. Go to the back and say what times what is 6. Now, I'm going to purposely choose a combination that doesn't work. 2 and 3. 2 times 3 is 6, but there's a problem here. 2 plus 3 is 5, and 3 minus 2 is 1. That is not going to get me 7. So when you choose a combination that doesn't work, you cross it out, and then you write the next combination, which in this case is 1 and 6, because 1 times 6 is 6, and 1 plus 6 is 7. So there's a lot of different thoughts on this part of this problem, but what I'm going to stress here is that just pick the first thing that pops into your mind in regard to 6. Right, like what times what is 6? 2 and 3, 1 and 6. Don't overthink it. Just plug in what you think is going to work. Okay. Now, if you struggle with multiplying, you don't know your times tables. There's some sort of issue of I'm not seeing what works. Maybe the numbers are huge. You can do this on the calculator. So if you go under y equals and you type in this case we'll do 6 divided by x, and when you hit, now mine I'm going to have to hit shift, yours you'll hit second, but second graph, what this tells me is 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6. So you can do this on the calculator. If you don't have a calculator present, you can still very easily do this by hopping on to Desmos, right? if Desmos will load. Let's see here. Come on, Desmos. I'm not sure why it's not loading. There we go. And we can type it into Desmos. So we can say y equals 6 divided by x. Now, if I look, you get the cogwheel table, right? And it's listing 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 3, and you can either literally go under 2 and just keep hitting enter if you want more values. So, tons of ways of doing that. Even if you're at home, you don't have a calculator. Tons of ways of doing that. Okay. All right. Next up. Okay. So again, we should be familiar at this point with the fact that it will start with D and D. Now we got to figure out what times what is 32. Again, my advice, just make up numbers. So I'm going to go with, and I haven't pre-done this, so I'm just 8, 4, right? 8 plus 4 is 12. That's not going to ever get me to 14. That is not the combination. What else multiplies to 32? 2 and 16. 16 minus 2 is 14. So here we want to say maybe negative 16 and plus 2, because that would give me negative 14. But you also want to note here that if you do play with that combination, you would still have a problem. Because when you multiply these two values, and this is the last part that's really important, you must get a positive. And there's no way a negative times a positive is a positive. So in all of these examples, we've had plus 6. Notice 1 times 6 is 6. In this one, negative times a negative was a positive. On this one, positive and positive is a positive. You have to make sure that the back term is matching up with the sign, and it doesn't when you make one positive and negative. And that's the only way you get the negative. So the only other combination would be 1 and 32, which clearly is not going to work. So none of these combinations work, and the answer here is prime. Okay, and that's it. Now, if this had been a minus, then it would have been the second option. Okay, next up. I'm not sure exactly what the deal is here. This is just going to be plus 1 and plus 6. I do believe we've done this before, but that's okay. All right, 1 plus 6 is 7. 1 times 6 is 6. Oh, I've chosen the same options twice. That's why. Okay. Or repeated twice. Okay, so we're going to jump to E. So here, again, what times what is x squared? X and x. We're going to jump to the back. What times what is 12? 4 and 3. I tend to choose numbers that are closest together. That's not always going to work. I want to get a negative 1, so the 4 will be negative and the 3 will be positive. 4 minus 3 is 1, but specifically I want negative 4 and plus 3 to get me a negative 1. And then, like in the last problem, you want to check to make sure negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and that is true. Okay, over here, we got z and z. What times what's 35? 5 and 7. 7 minus 5 is 2. 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. You're starting hopefully to see that this is not bad at all. And the last one, they're trying to scare you with the ends, but the beginning is still m and m. Now, whatever is going to happen at the end, you're just going to need to tack on an n, because n times n would give me n squared. So we just have to think what times what is going to be 6. And I like to choose the numbers that are closest together, 3 and 2. I need to get a negative 1, so negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. And then to confirm, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. So this would be the combination that works. Be careful, because it is very easy with these signs to make a silly mistake. Okay, but that is all that you have to do in this section. Hopefully this makes sense, and hopefully you're jumping onto your Delta Math now and finishing it up. Thank you guys, and I will see you when I see you. Bye-bye for now.